He worked there. Not rumored. Not speculated. Verified. Clearance level. Access granted. Inside one of the most restricted facilities in the world. And then he disappeared. No announcement. No explanation. No record of what happened next. Just gone. For decades, Area 51 has existed in a strange space between confirmation and denial. Officially acknowledged, but never fully explained. A place where advanced technology is tested, where classified projects are developed, where access is limited to those who need to know. And even then, only parts of the truth are revealed. The man who vanished was not an outsider. He wasn't a conspiracy theorist. He wasn't someone trying to get attention. He was part of the system. An employee. Someone who had been inside. Someone who had seen things others hadn't. At first, nothing about his work stood out. Standard procedures. Routine operations. Assignments that were classified. But not unusual for someone in his position. Then something changed. His behavior. Subtle at first. According to those who worked near him, he became quieter, more withdrawn, less willing to discuss even the most basic parts of his job, not out of discipline, out of caution, as if he understood something had shifted, something he wasn't supposed to notice. Then came the last confirmed interaction, a conversation, short, unremarkable on the surface, but later it would be the only reference point. He mentioned a project, not by name, not directly, just enough to suggest it didn't follow the same structure as everything else. Different protocols, different access, different oversight, and then nothing. He didn't show up the next day, or the day after. At first, it was treated as a personal issue. Absence, leave, something temporary. But when it continued, questions were asked. Quietly, internally. No external reports. No public statements. Just internal checks. And what they found didn't line up. His records were still there, but parts of them were missing. Access logs incomplete. Schedules altered. Details removed. Not erased entirely. Just enough to break continuity, as if someone had gone through his history and taken pieces out. The kind of editing that doesn't remove someone, but makes them harder to trace, harder to follow. Colleagues were instructed not to discuss it. Not directly, not indirectly. Just move forward. Continue operations. Ignore the absence. And for the most part, they did. Because that's how those systems function. Compartmentalized, isolated, controlled. But over time, fragments began to surface. Not official documents, not confirmed reports, just accounts. Stories from individuals who claimed to have known him, worked near him, seen the changes. He had started asking questions, not about his assignments, but about the structure itself. Why certain projects were separated, why access was restricted in unusual ways, why some areas required clearance that didn't match the level of work being done, and more importantly, who was overseeing those areas, because it wasn't always who it was supposed to be. That's when the narrative shifts, because in environments like that, questions aren't ignored, they're tracked. And once someone starts asking the wrong ones, their position changes. Not publicly, not immediately, but internally. Quiet adjustments, reassignment, restriction, observation, and sometimes removal. But removal doesn't always mean what it sounds like. Not disappearance in the conventional sense. Something more controlled, more contained. Because if someone had access to something they weren't supposed to fully understand, then letting them leave isn't always an option. That's the part no one can confirm. What actually happened, where he went, whether he was reassigned, relocated, or something else entirely. Because there are no records that complete the story. Only the beginning, and the absence that followed, and the changes made afterward. Because after he was gone, certain procedures were adjusted, access levels modified, oversight increased in specific areas. Not across the board, just in places that matched what he had referenced, which suggests something. Not confirmation, but a pattern, a reaction, as if his questions had touched something real, something that required correction, containment. And if that's the case, then the more important question isn't what happened to him, it's what he saw. Because whatever it was enough to alter a system that doesn't change easily. And if something inside a place like that can trigger that kind of response, then it's not just classified, it's protected. And if it's protected, then how many others have seen it? And how many of them are no longer part of the record? And this isn't the only time someone connected to a classified program disappeared without explanation, because somewhere else, another individual began asking questions they weren't supposed to ask. And what happened next followed a pattern that's difficult to ignore. And this wasn't the only time someone vanished after seeing something they couldn't explain. Because somewhere else, something even harder to understand was already happening.